Well, thank you for joining us after that delicious lunch. I know it's hard to come back in from being outside in the beautiful sun. That's why we bring you to Punta Mita, where you can be tortured by all the beauty outside, and we try to make up for it by generating some very interesting content and discussions here. So, our next speaker is I think it's very relevant because I had a dinner conversation with him in Mexico City, and I was just trying to paint the landscape for him about one of the conversations, one of the topics that was raised in earlier at the Tech Talks. And I said to him that even some members of regional venture capital associations and other international players, when I talk about Mexico, they simply look at me and they've said to me, what has come out of Mexico? And, it leaves you not speechless, because there are great examples, and they're just not widely publicized. They're not talked about as much as they should be, and it's all of our responsibility to share these success stories with the community at large. And one of those success stories we have right here. It's actually Arturo Galvan with his company called Naranja. Now, what was Naranja before? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, on that note, I'll leave you with Arturo Galvan, who has a mobile technology company here in Mexico. Arturo has also become a very active player in advancing the entrepreneurial ecosystem. He was an Endeavor entrepreneur. He's also an Endeavor mentor, and he decided to use the resources from all that money he made at Naranja and to start an accelerator, an incubator program called Naranja Labs. And he's also launching a seed fund. So, Arturo, if you'll come up and join me.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Lynn. My presentation is going to be a little bit biased because it's about mobile, and I think mobile is in my heart, and because it's a personal matter. And let me tell you why. I had the opportunity to be a technology entrepreneur for 25 years. So 25 years ago, when I started my first digital company, it was called Infocell, which was actually the name of the company that Robin was asking me for, my first company. It was in the days of 1988, so that was like 7 years before the internet. So I decided to create a bulletin board service with these old PCs, the original PCs of the 80s, and with the extremely old telephone lines of Mexico. But the most important problem was not that. It was that nobody was online. Nobody was connected. Now that I see mobile that promises to connect them all, to connect us all, it's amazing. For me, it's like comparing those 2 days, today and in 1988, when I founded the first company. I really envy the entrepreneurs today, which can see in a market where there is 700 million people in Latin America with a phone in their hands, with different kinds of interactivities, from sending SMS, which is already an interactivity. They're trying to connect somehow in a limited way, to a more sophisticated ones that you can have on an iPhone or Android. So I'm really very personal on the matter of being in the mobile, and the presentation is about mobile. By the way, yes, I did have my exit in 1999. We sold Infocell to Telefónica. It became the second largest exit ever in the dot-com era of Latin America. We sold the company for almost $300 million in 1999. We merged it with a new company built by Telefónica at the time called Terra. We IPO it, and the valuation skyrocketed during those late days of 1999 and early days of 2000. So it was an awesome experience. I was part of the IPO roadshow, and I was in NASDAQ pushing the button to start the trading of the stock, all that in those days. But then the collapse came, so everybody forgot about what happened before the collapse. So that's why the story is not that well known nowadays, because that everybody died. It's like the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing. It's disappeared the whole thing for years. Anyway, now in my second entrepreneurial effort is Naranja. And let me give you just a quick glimpse on what Naranja is. Naranja is a company founded in Monterrey. For those of you that don't know where Monterrey is, it's south of Texas, 100 miles south of Texas. It's the second or third largest city of Mexico, depending on how you measure that. And what we offer is a digital commerce platform. That's what we have. We have built a mobile platform for digital commerce. We're trying to solve the huge problem of the unbanked society, which doesn't have a way of participating in the digital economy. This is strange maybe for most of the US-based investors here in this event, because you all are on the understanding where you have 100% penetration of the internet, you also have 100% penetration of banking, of credit cards. So it's pretty easy to connect those two and make a huge business out of that, like Amazon and many others. But in the emerging markets of the world, when you have 100% penetration, we don't have it yet, but it will come soon. But the banking penetration is only 15%. Then those two do not connect. So there's a need there to build something else, something parallel that can solve the digital payment infrastructure. Today we have connected 500 million people to our platform. So today in our platform, 500 million people can click and buy a digital good. That's up and running today in 9 countries in Latin America, one more coming in the next few days. So we enable consumers to buy stuff online, and we enable merchants to sell. I was the other day having a conversation with the founder of Rovio. I had a conversation via Skype to Finland, and I asked him, how are you selling your games in Latin America? And he told me, I'm using Apple Store and Google Play. And good for you. But do you know that you're only reaching 15% of the population? And he said, yeah, I think I do, but I'm not sure. Tell me about it. So after I finished my pitch, he signed in, and we're going to be distributing Rovio's games in our platform in the early 2014. The same thing happened for Electronic Arts and other game developers in outside Mexico and in Mexico today. So, and recently, as Robin mentioned, we launched Naranja Ventures, which is our arm to really foster development of the ecosystem and trying to build more companies, help to build more companies that can use our platform for distribution and monetization. So that's it on us. I'll go directly to what I want to share with you, which is why mobile is important and why is different than what you guys in the US see. Because this mobile in Latin America and other emerging markets it has a different pitch, if you allow me to use that word. First of all, just a ballpark numbers. I'm sure you all know, but just to make sure we all have it. It's the penetration mobile is huge, as you can see here. It's we're already in the 3 billion plus range of people using the mobile phones in the world. This is a world number. But what is also interesting to see is that the number is growing. If you include not just person, but also things connected, it will go to the 10 billion number in the next 5 years. So this is starting to become, like I like to call it, the mobile tsunami. It's growing, it's slowly but surely, and becoming a huge wave. It's coming our way and hitting us. What is more important is the growth rates. And not just that it's 4 times faster, the growth, than the population, but especially in the use of data. So the use that we all give to the mobile phone as a data channel, as an internet channel, is growing, as you can see, 25% CAGR. So this is happening not just in the US or the developed markets, but it's happening in Latin America. So right now, Latin America internet penetration is below 40%. It will be like 80% in the next 5 years. So this will add to this tsunami coming our way. That this is a huge new market in the process of being built. This is different to the US or the developed markets, which already in 100% penetration. So mobile is not going to change that. It's going to bring a different value, different experience, but to somebody that's already connected. So more data, it's 12 times more data will be used per month in 2017. That means that we all going to be using it more and more and more. It's basically the same thing. And the penetration of mobile phones is also changing a lot. It's growing to more than one per person. In developed countries, it's 110. In LATAM, it's about 80. In all the economies, 85%. So everybody will have a phone, and with the arrival of phones that are cheaper, smartphones cheaper, you will have smartphones available for almost anybody. Telefonica just announced a month ago the launch of these Firefox phones in Latin America for $70. That's in the feature phone price range. So most of the people in the next 2 or 3 years will have a smartphone in their hands. So it's a computer in the hands of all the Latin Americans connected to the internet for the first time, at least half of those. But is it important? Why is it important? Can we measure the value of this? But the value of this economy that is built around mobile in Latin America is that it's already generating 3.6% of our regional GDP. Mobile economy is already 3.6%. And with the speed that we have of growth in this industry, this number will grow to a number closer to 10% in the next 5 years. So this is huge. 10% of the Latin American economy will be based around mobile phones in the next 5 years. I think it's amazing. And the governments are making a lot of money out of that. So that's why when I talk to the government officials, they say, you guys, you want to do a reform in Mexico? Do the mobile reform. You know, let's make this easier for everybody to use the mobile phones as a platform for business and for payments and for many things. Because this is generating already almost $50 billion in taxes for them. So and this is only 2013. But does it matter? And this is, for me, the most important slide of all the slides I'm going to show you today. This has been demonstrated. I think this is not very clear on the orange letters there, but the impact on GDP, productivity, and employment over time, when you have a 10% increase on broadband penetration, generates 3.11% more GDP in the countries. This is facts. Latin America is investing a lot of money to build broadband. And we will move ahead on this in the next 5 years. We will be maybe in the 50% range from 10%, which is today. So this is going to generate a lot of growth for the economy of Latin America. This is not just playing games on the phone. This is creating employment, it's creating growth, creating productivity. The mobile phone is really a huge opportunity for the economies of our region, especially in the emerging market of the world. In Latin America, we lack of many things: education, health, finance services. And there's been a problem to really take these services to the bottom of the pyramid for ages. We haven't found the formula to take this, for instance, let's say education, to the bottom of the pyramid. The problem in the emerging markets is nothing else but education. But the mobile phone in the hands of 100 million Mexicans in the next 5 years could become the best teacher of them all. Could become an education platform to take English classes to the bottom of the pyramid, to take anything. Health, same thing. So mobile phone is not just, again, playing Candy Crush. Mobile phones for Latin America, and especially Mexico, it's going to become an enabler of education, enabler of health, enabler of finance, limiting the financial exclusion. I mean, you want to play Candy Crush. Let's go back to the Candy Crush example. You want to play Candy Crush today, and you have your own Android phone, and you're pretty happy, and then you click on Google Play and try to buy Candy Crush or buy some lives or whatever it is you buy in Candy Crush, they will ask you for a credit card. Now, 85% of the Mexicans or Latin Americans do not have a credit card. So you're outside even of the gaming, society. So the limitations brought by the lack of payment availability, platform availability is huge in everything, even in entertainment, as I was mentioning. I have a friend that offers moving movie theaters. They take it home town by town, and they have demonstrated to the mayors of the cities that you can decrease the number of crime in those little towns because you're getting people entertained in the afternoons or nights instead of making dumb things. So it's even getting entertainment to the people is important. So mobile will become a way of taking entertainment even to those societies. So yes, somebody mentioned before that we need more success cases to create an ecosystem in LATAM to build on these opportunities. We have a lot of opportunities being brought by this huge mobile landscape that I just described. Who's taking advantage of those? Not many guys. Some of them are here in this slide. Some. I'm sure there's some missing in there. But there's not like 100,000 companies doing things. But the opportunity is that big that we should have, I'm not sure if 100,000, but at least 1,000 companies developing services for health, for education, you name it, today. Because this is coming our way. The mobile tsunami is coming our way pretty soon. So our vision, and this is the way we think. Maybe you agree or maybe you don't. But the way we see that this is going to work, if we can really create an ecosystem of entrepreneurs in Mexico, Latin America, we call this the connect the dots strategy. In Mexico, there's a lot of funds. There's a lot of money. The wealthiest man of the world lives here. Yeah, and there's a lot more money, and there's a lot of funds. Every week there's a new fund. The government just pour $25 million to new funds in the last week or so. So there's a lot of money available. So is the lack of money the problem to create an ecosystem in Mexico? I think it's not. Do we have enough talent with the knowledge and the education for building companies? I think we do. There's huge, very important universities building entrepreneurial programs, and like ITAM, we were discussing with the guys of ITAM during break about that, and Monterrey Tech, and many universities creating a lot of great talent. So is it a lack of talent? It's not. Is there relational capital available, networking available for people? Sure, there is. I mean, there's Endeavor is one organization building this kind of infrastructure. So you get into Endeavor, I'm an Endeavor entrepreneur, and they open doors like on a daily basis. Whatever door I needed to open, they open it for us. So having access to real networking is also available. And is the government helping? Maybe not good enough, but they're doing many things. Recently, again, they invested $25 million in building funds. So it's happening, and Afinsa is here doing the same thing. So I'm sure they can do more, but there's something in there happening. So what's missing? We believe that the problem is that the points are not connected. We haven't built the ecosystem. I think that when people talk about should we build a Silicon Valley in Mexico, I always say, forget about Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is in Silicon Valley. But let's learn the lessons from Silicon Valley. And the lesson from Silicon Valley, that's a fully connected ecosystem. The university is there, fully connected to the funds, to the angels, the entrepreneurs. The whole thing is connected. And what's happening in our country still today, it's changing, but still today, is that the dots are not connected. So when you go to the universities, and they're not talking with the funds, and the funds are not really talking with the universities, so the government is pretty far away from those two. So it's not really connected. This kind of events is trying to build this connection. We had a mobile summit a couple of weeks ago in Mexico City, and it was an awesome event, fully packed rooms and all that. And it was designed to connect the dots. In that event, we had our own startups that we are accelerating, presenting to investors that we brought in, and it was government officials there learning what's happening in the ecosystem and on the entrepreneurial side. So it's happening, but it's slowly. And I think that's the task that we all have here, is how can we connect those elements. So we believe that if we do connect them, we will change the ecosystem. And it's going to be much easier than what we believe. Sometimes we say, we're that far away from Silicon Valley that you feel like it's impossible, you know? We're not really close to those bars and cafes where all the entrepreneurs meet and the angels and say, well, so I need to move to Silicon Valley and be there. And Gabo, he doesn't want to live there because it's really rich in the experience and the contacts. And so, but that's limited for a few guys. So how can we try to build the same thing here? I think it's our challenge. And that's what we are somehow trying to do in the technology side. So our approach to connect the dots is this. We, based on our competence and strength on the mobile ecosystem and the technology ecosystem as well, we decided to go ahead and do something. So stop just complaining and criticizing and say, you know what, if you want to connect the dots, okay, go and connect them. So we're trying to do it in our side. There's many other guys doing similar things, I guess, but this is our story. So we launched Naranja Ventures this year. It's a new unit built around our Naranja ecosystem, which includes 3 elements. One in Naranja Labs is our own accelerator. It's a Y Combinator model with a pitch. It's connected to a company that is in the mobile space. So we are creating a lot of synergies between the accelerator companies in our own company. That's the first difference. You get a lot of local expertise because this accelerator is right in our offices. So our own team is helping them to be successful. So there's a real expertise that is being used today, and now we are sharing that with these young guys. We also, what we're doing is talking about connecting the dots. We believe that we need to create or help create regional stories, not just Mexican companies, but regional companies. So we partner with accelerators in Argentina, like NextTP Labs, in Brazil, 21212, in Colombia, and we're talking with other accelerators in the region to co-accelerate and co-invest in the companies that we are accelerating. For instance, our first batch of Naranja Labs, it's just graduated last week, and it was a co-investment of NextTP Lab from Argentina and Naranja Labs of Mexico. So those companies are using not just the money, but also the resources and networking of the Argentine partner. So for them, it's easier to go to Argentina now because they have a local partner. Somebody mentioned earlier before that there are a lot of companies that want to come to Mexico from Brazil, Argentina, so on and so forth. So this is the way to do it. You have a local partner, and then the doors are open. But trying to create, then we found out that after we graduate these startups, they join this, what we like to call the valley of death process. So they, right next to being graduated, accelerated, somebody like us invested $40,000 or $50,000 with them. We say goodbye to them, and what's next? It's in Mexico today, it's easier to find a $1 million check than a $100,000 check. So there's a huge lack of angel investment. That is something that exists, but exists not enough. And seed capital funds are also not very available. funds are, because of the economics of the funds tend to be larger, and they like to write larger checks. So who's connecting the dots of the startup that is coming out of accelerator to an investment fund, a VC fund that wants to write a $500 or $1 million check? So that little time is where most of the companies just die. This is valley of death. So we're trying to help those companies to cross the chasm of this valley of death and make it to the next step. So this link, this is a missing link in the ecosystem that we're trying to build, at least in tech. There's many other industries that need the same thing, but this is our side. And then in the final step, which is the BC step, what we're doing is now we don't have a vehicle for as a BC, even though our idea is to build one in the future. Our idea now is to invest in funds that are in the ecosystem. So we're becoming a limited partner to some of the funds, even some of the funds that are here present, we're investing in them. So trying to connect the dots of in the three stages of the development of the startups. But along this, where we're building with universities and other educational institutes is to build what we call Naranja Knowledge, is to create and the underpinning of having access to better education from web developer to user experience to business, whatever it is required. So we're trying to connect the educational ecosystem to our ecosystem. Last week I was in New York talking with the guys of General Assembly to bring their training, online training to Mexico through us, so we can help the entrepreneurs be better. So this is just a couple of pictures of our Naranja Labs, our first generation. I was telling Robin the other day that last year, this same event, Mita Talk, Tech Talks, I was here, and after the event, I decided to do something. It's actually the beginning of everything was here. I'm really happy to say that Mita touched me. And so thank to Robin and Lynn about that, because few weeks after Mita, I founded Naranja Ventures. I started to build a team, and 1 year later, we have invested in 11 companies already. We have a full team of managers and of our Naranja Ventures unit, and the brand has been built a lot around this new strategy. So it's in just 1 year we have built many things. So when you focus and you execute, you can really do well. So. We're launching Investor Nights. It's an event that we're trying to teach how to be an angel investor. So we invite friends, say, come to an event, have a few drinks, and we'll tell you about angel investing. So we're trying to create the culture of angel investing. And then we also have the Mobile Summit. All this in 1 year. So it's been amazing last year. So that's it. I don't know if you have any question. I have 1 minute, I think. Gabo?
Do you think what you're doing, do you think the market is big enough to have more naranjas in Mexico? And are you helping that ecosystem be created? You're in Monterrey, so there's something in Mexico City?
You mean Mexico City?
Or the rest of the country? So the question was, is there space for more like naranja in the rest of Mexico? And do you think you'd be helpful in helping create that ecosystem continue to grow?
Yeah, there's a space, not just in Mexico and other cities, but also in other countries in the region. We're trying to create this connection and have more people join this same strategy. We need more people working on the first layer of the ecosystem, where the young guys are trying to start. It's the hard way. It's much easier to be like in second or third layer, which you're expecting the pipeline to come your way and choosing from one good company to the other good company. But who's choosing out of 200, for instance, in our first generation for Naranja Labs, we filtered out of 200 companies, 6. That was our first generation. So that is a hard work. And then we built a mentor network around that, which, by the way, we want them to become angels in a second phase. So it's a hard work. You don't make a lot of money in there. Actually, you don't make any. So you're really building the ecosystem, and you're betting for the future. And that's why I think nobody is really doing it, because it's not like you're gonna get rich next day. So but we also have a team looking for companies, good companies around the region, flying everywhere to Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and trying to connect those companies to our ecosystem and invest in those companies. But all of those companies are in the early stages of development. But yes, we're talking with many people in the ecosystem to try to make this and replicate this as many times as possible. Anything else? Good. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Schumacher. I'm the global managing director of that name that sits on a lot of these walls called Boost Digital. And I'm pretty excited to be here. We were here last year at this conference, and that conference was the same day I sold my company to Boost. So it was a very good thing, and now we're here 1 year later, and now the company that bought us is getting sold to another company. So every time I come to Mita, something sells. So for me, it's a good conference. If we could keep doing this every year, I could probably quit working next year, Lynn. So if you could keep that up. And for me, this is an exciting conference. It's, in my view, with people such as Mike, and you've got Kevin Egan from Microsoft, you got some luminaries here that you can just learn a lot from. And I look at this as a catalyst for not only Mexico, but Latin America. And not only Latin America, but the Americas. And as it evolves, I could see it being to what, Allen and Co. is to media. I think this can be to the tech startup community. And before I introduce John, who's a good friend and an amazing speaker and has done some crazy things for us, just so for context-wise, Boost Digital is, in a sentence, a digital R&D and operations firm. We build startups. We've grown about 10x. We started when we were acquired, we were about 23 people. We're now north of 200. We have 23 active startups going around the world, including Mexico City, where we're doing some interesting work for a small pharmacy here that's going to rival anything Walgreens or CVS or Walmart could even think of. And with that, we're a human-centered design shop, which is the topic that'll be next. And around that, what we do at Boost Digital is we rely on technology to be an enabler of that human-centered design. And the technology we use is from our partner Oblong, which John is the chief scientist for. And I think what he'll be able to show you is how that technology can actually enable this human-centered design, this innovation that we're all talking about here, and what Mike has talked about and what others will continue to talk about. And when clients walk into our offices, they literally look around like this. We don't have great views like we have here. We're just up the coast in Manhattan Beach in Los Angeles. But when they walk into our offices, they look around like this, and they all say, this looks like Minority Report. And part of the reason is John was the technology advisor for Minority Report, and we're helping him commercialize a lot of their technologies. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce John Underkoffler. And he's got one heck of a resume, but I'll just give you a little bit. He's the co-founder, chief scientist of Oblong Industries. Oblong's technology trajectories are built on decades of foundational work at MIT Media Laboratory, where John was responsible for innovations in real-time computing graphics systems, large-scale visualization techniques, and I/O bulb and luminous room systems. And he's been a science advisor in other movies like The Hulk and Iron Man. So he's a good friend, good partner, key for us. Without further, John, come on upstairs.
Thanks, Jeff. This morning, Jeff and I flipped a coin to see who would dress comfortably and who would dress like an idiot, and I think you can tell who won. Let's see, there we are, there's some slides. So we're here indeed to talk about human-centered design, and I'm going to spend about 3% of my time here talking about what I think is a very simple but a very important idea, maybe even a universal idea. And then I'm going to spend 97% of the time talking about personal stuff in my company, which means 3% of the time, it might be worthwhile to pay attention, and 97% of the time, you should check your email and worry about whether you clean the lint filter at home. So let's start with the not time-wasting stuff. I'm not here with a thesis about design. The idea is that design is the thesis. Lynn started the day by suggesting that information is power, and that's true, but I think design is secret power. And that's because design itself, in a way, is universal. Design has a way of revealing truths about the world and about human beings. And in turn, that's because design is maybe a fundamental activity of us as human beings. It both describes us, but it's what we're about. We create, we synthesize, we design. We leave the world in a different state than the way in which we found it. So from my point of view, we're exiting 30 years when design was optional, when technology could be built and sold for technology's sake alone, and maybe at the end you put some design on it, right? You know, you build the same old motherboard and then you put it in a perfect beryllium box or something like that. That doesn't work anymore. I think that the only way we're going to make big advances is to consider design first and have technology just be an enabling factor. So design for design's sake, or more importantly, design for human beings' sake. And if I were an investor, I'm an entrepreneur instead, which means I have no money, but if I had some and I were an investor, I would pay special attention to startups that are focused on design. So that's the end of the good stuff. Now the rest of it. Let's actually take a look here. There's 3 important words in this title. 2 of them obviously are design and humans. And it might seem, you know, thinking about it, human-centered design, isn't that tautological? Isn't that the same information again and again? Who would design be for if not for humans? But again, I think we need to remind ourselves that we're entering a new era where we pay attention to design and it's all about the human beings. It's not about the human being as an unfortunate impediment between the wallet and some technology. The other word that's important here is computer. And it's a very ugly and old-fashioned word. We don't like it anymore. We have lots of computers. We have more and more computers on us all the time. But we don't call them that. We call them smartphones and tablets. We call them all sorts of things. We just don't call them computers. And it seems that we don't like computers anymore. So we'll take a look at why that might be. And as a kind of framing device, I'd like to propose the following. Let's think about location. Let's think about here versus there. Those are 2 basic concepts in most kind of human cognitive states, most languages. Some languages have finer gradations, but let's start with here and there. So this is a computer from 1979. Some of you who are in your 80s, like me, may even recognize this. That's an Apple II Plus. And when you used an Apple II Plus, everything that was yours, all of your data, your games, your spreadsheets, whatever it was here. In fact, it was here. It was literally under your fingertips. If it wasn't there, it meant that something had gone wrong and it was no longer anywhere. So flash forward 35 years, and interestingly enough, consider the same company. This is 2/3 of a device ecosystem that's produced by that same company. It's a company whose name is not unlike Naranja. These are computers, of course, but they're beautiful. They're incredibly designed, and they undertake all sorts of sophisticated feats of media and entertainment. But when you use these, where is your stuff? It's not here anymore. It's there. It's in the cloud. So we don't like computers. We sent them away to live in the cloud. That suggests to me that there's a new opportunity, which is that there's now an empty computer-shaped hole between little devices that are useful, but also kind of toys, and powerful servers which live in the cloud. And the opportunity is to fill in that space. If we could fill that space in with something that we liked, something that was worthy of us as human beings, worthy of us as creators and designers, that might be really interesting. And that's one of the premises of my company, Oblong Industries, which is based in Los Angeles. So let's go between those 2 eras of computing and take a look at this. When I talk about design, the first thing that I have to think about is the user interface. And that's fundamental because that's all we have as human beings. It doesn't matter how much Hadoop or how much AI is out there in the cloud. The UI, the user interface, is the part that gets from whatever that is into your head. And if it can't do that, then you don't have a real experience, or you're not a valuable piece of that interaction loop. So let's think about the UI. the Apple Macintosh, 1984, that was the last time that we took a change in UI seriously. Before that, it was command line. After that, we taught computers to think about pictures and to let us talk in pictures. That was an amazing feat for then. Let's think a little bit about what the UI talks, how it thinks. Let's think about what the soul of the UI is. What is its purpose? Well, mostly it's about moving files around, right? All the little icons on the desktop and the trash can and the desktop metaphor and the folders. That's all very clerical. It's a kind of file clerk soul. It's a kind of Franz Kafka soul. And I think we need to do better. We need to give the machine a new soul that doesn't think so much about files and filing, but maybe thinks about something more important to humans. What if the computer believed that it was a designer? Or what if the computer believed that it was an assistant to you and you're a designer? That's an interesting proposition. And I believe that if we build computers like that, if we build operating systems and user interfaces like that with design as the first goal, then of course we can still do our spreadsheets, we can still use our databases, but these machines will be more capable, radically more capable, and capable in the sense that they give us as human beings new abilities, new agency, new efficacy, new and better ways to change the world. We're going to skip over this stuff because I think I'd rather get to the panel part more quickly and get me out of your way. Minority Report was an important moment for my company because oddly enough it was an opportunity to test some of these new user interface ideas. And Minority Report was rare among films because it was able to engage design at a global scale. Steven Spielberg told us we had to design a complete world in 2054. And he gave us more time to do that than usually happens on films. And so we designed elements to do with ecology and architecture, advertising and social science, personal technologies for the home, surfaces that could be hot or cold so that you can cook, personal information technologies that you strap to your face. That one looks a little familiar. We tried to predict 50 years in advance, and we really only got 10, which is one liability of trying to predict too much. Transportation technologies, specific transportation technologies, fictional technologies for psychic children, and a bunch of technologies that didn't make it into the movie. Of course, the technology that people spend the most time talking about 12 years after the film are these technologies, because Spielberg wanted to know what computers would look like in 50 years. He said, I don't want to see keyboards and mice. I don't want to see any of that. That's boring. And thank you, Stephen. He said, I don't want to see voice recognition technology because you can't see voice recognition technology. He's a filmmaker. It had to look really interesting. So he loved the idea that his actors could stand in the middle of a vast array of screens and literally conduct information, point at information, deal with information as a conductor might, or as Mickey Mouse might in Fantasia, standing on the promontory conducting the heavens. That's cinematic. So we went to work, and we synthesized a new kind of gestural control language for computers. Some of the pages in our dictionary are captured here. So these dictionaries were given to the actors so they could practice. We made training videos so that they could rehearse. And when it came time to film, they knew this system. Even though special effects were used to put the images into the screens, it didn't matter because the actors were using this new technology in their imaginations a little bit. And the result was something that maybe had not been seen in a film before. The result was something where you could see the actor's intent. It wasn't just a little snippet of a new technology that the movie cut away from. The director was able to use these scenes to tell part of the story, to advance the storyline. And many people talk about these scenes and write about these scenes because it's cool technology. But I think the reason we like these scenes as humans is not just that it's cool, but that we can see causality. We can see human will being changed into information and being used to correlate information and analyze it and so forth. We can see a human being doing his job here. And that's exciting to us. We like process. We like change as human beings. And in fact, Spielberg was so excited that originally, even though only the Tom Cruise character was supposed to use this new tech, he wrote additional scenes so that Colin Farrell here and Neil McDonough could also use the technology. So we had hijacked Hollywood. We had taken the filmmaking apparatus, and this was an accident, and used it to test out new UI ideas. When you do a normal focus group or a research study, maybe you can get 100 people or 200 people in. But accidentally, we were able to get these new ideas in front of 10 million eyes, 100 million eyes. We don't really know. And that's such a rare opportunity and such a great bit of luck that we had to make good on it. We had to start a company, which is Oblong, to build that technology in the real world. The other piece of prediction that Minority Report engaged in as a movie, and no one's written about it, is that we said the future is going to be filled with display, filled with pixels. There will be pixels everywhere. There will be giant projected displays. There will be tiny portable displays that you carry. There will be displays that are on your clothing. There will be displays that are jewelry on your hands, and that are in your vehicles, and that are every place in the world. And that's a very interesting prediction, because if you follow it, if you believe that, and actually it came true, right? Now we have a world that's filled with displays, more and more pixels. That's a good thing. If you follow that idea, where do you get? Let's try it just for 1 minute. So if we want experiences, computational experiences, digital experiences, human experience and design experiences that involve pixels, well, why should they stop at the physical boundaries of each device? That's a mistake. That's a historical accident, and we take it for granted, but it's a liability. It's a problem. And what we want is for an experience that maybe starts here, and when you get close to more pixels, why shouldn't these pixels become available to my work, or my communications, or my data, or my applications? If that's true, then we need a new kind of operating system. We need a distributed operating system that can allow data to jump from device to device, or let multiple devices run a single program to give you a single experience. That's what G-Speak is. So it's the first thing that we built at Oblong. It is a distributed operating system, and when you write programs or applications in G-Speak, they have that property that you can involve as many computers, maybe on different operating systems, maybe with different physical and CPU architectures as you want. So let's very briefly take a look at 4 design principles that we use at Oblong when we write new programs on top of G-Speak. 1, space is incredibly important. We live in architectural space as humans. We build architecture around us to house us and to make new things possible. Architecture is space that's been shaped into human scale. Computers, on the other hand, and pixels have always regarded space as a kind of abstraction. So when you write a program with most toolkits and you want to talk about the pixel that's in the top left of the screen, what are the coordinates of that pixel? Well, it's 0, 0. What if you have a second screen? What are the coordinates of that pixel? Well, unfortunately, in almost every toolkit in the world, in almost every language in the world, that's also 0, 0, because people only ever thought about one screen. So the only way to disambiguate that, the only way to break that problem, is to give each pixel a new name. And the new name is its coordinates here in the room with us, 3-dimensional coordinates that we share as humans. We're already experts here. Now the pixels are going to learn what it means to live in the real world. And that enables all sorts of new ideas. It enables gestural computing. Let me go back 1 slide. Can we go backwards? There we go. So this is a video of some early experiments with G-Speak. Some of the stuff is 5 and 6 years old. But there you see gestural pointing. You point at something that you can see, which we can all do as human beings, and you can grab it, and you can manipulate it. And there's an imaginary line, like a laser pointer, that goes from your finger to the pixels and to the data. And that connects you and data in a new way, in a visceral way, in a way that you already understand. So now the human being is the expert, not the computer, and the computer follows along. If you get close to something, you can touch it, of course, but touch is a fairly limited form of interaction. It's appropriate sometimes. We want the entire continuum that goes from free space gesture down to proximity when you get close to something, to touch when you need friction. You can reach out and grab virtual objects and pull them toward you, and there's something powerful about having that many pixels connected to your body and connected to your mind. There you saw a display moving underneath pixels. Sometimes for us, pixels are physical, and they should still respect that same idea of space and the same kinds of gestural language. And navigation through 3 space is critical. We understand 3 space because of 100 million years of evolution of our eyes and our bodies understanding how to move through space, understanding what space means. If you can connect up visualization with the other parts of your brain, the muscle memory, the haptics, the proprioception, all the stuff that's about movement, then you can really gain new kinds of understanding. And we build very sophisticated applications. This one is for oil and gas exploration and recovery. And these are systems where the UI is the key to solving problems that can't be solved any other way. You don't need more AI or a bigger database. What you need is more bandwidth in and out of the human being. Second design principle is agency. We used this word before when we were talking about what people want. People want to change the world. People want to affect the world. People want their will on the inside to be able to come out and create new structures. And agency has the property that when you exercise it, when you exercise your will as a human being and you make something new, it feels amazing. It feels exhilarating. And that's uniquely tied up with the idea of design and aesthetics. When you build a UI that gets it right, a UI that is working properly, it should be exhilarating. It should feel like skiing or swimming or running or playing a clarinet or whatever it is that you do in the physical world that engages both your mind and your gut. And that's how you know when UI has gotten good. Here's a little look at a system we wrote some years ago to allow people to experiment with film. Cinema is interesting because it's throughout its history been a one-way medium. It comes out of the screen to you. And here we said, well, what if it were a two-way medium? What if you could talk back to cinema? What if you could use cinema as a communications device? So here you can scrub through many different movies, but then you can take them apart. You can pull a vehicle or a person or a prop or an actor or some landscape out of a film and bring it down onto a composing surface where you can now manipulate it. And you can go to a different movie that was never meant to work together with the first movie and pull out a second character and put those together. So although this may be an interesting look at the future of editing or media manipulation, for us at Oblong, really, this is a metaphor. This is a poem about how you should feel as a human being and the kind of access that you should have to your own data, to your own communications. Anything that you have digitally, you should be able to take apart and reassemble at this level of granularity, in this kind of fine and sophisticated way. That should be the promise that computers make to you and make good on. And of course, it's always exhilarating to throw huge chunks of pixels around the room. Pixels. This is a subtle point, but I think we're on the very beginning of an interesting change. Now, we've spent the last 15 years getting very, very interested in devices, loving our devices, and we've been taught by a couple of amazing companies that devices are worth loving, and indeed they are. They're designed and engineered to a kind of a level of beauty that has never been seen before. But what do we really care about? Do we care about the devices? No, we care about the content, and the content is held in the pixels. So again, as I was saying earlier, where the pixels and the communication and the data and the applications from one device should be able to flow onto another, that's the world we want to get to. And in that world, we care first about the pixels and only then about the devices. That will have interesting consequences for commerce. I think overall it's a good thing, but it will mean a shift in power. And as a demonstration of some of that, here's a simple system we wrote recently at Oblong, and you see a little tiny bit of media, a picture, running around 5 different screens that are being driven by 3 different computers running 2 different operating systems. And it doesn't matter because the system is written in Greenhouse, which is a dialect of G-Speak that you can download freely and experiment with. It's all synchronized in time and space. When you write this program, you don't have to think about how many screens or how many computers. You just write the program, and if you bring another screen or another computer into the room, then your data can flow onto it as well. This is media, this is computation that makes spatial sense and that makes human sense. The same basic idea here, where we pull a little tree, a digital model from a Macintosh to a giant Linux screen, pick up another one. We're using a prime sense sensor in that case. We deposit the media onto this machine, and now we use a near-field leap motion sensor. So there's something else interesting going on here, which is multiplicity. We're not just saying that gesture replaces the mouse. We're saying the future is everything. It's the right tool for the task at every moment. When you go to the drawer in your kitchen, you're not confused because there's a knife and a fork and a spoon. If you need to cut something, you pick up the knife, and if you need to eat some soup, you pick up the spoon. We're good at that as human beings, so we don't have to choose just one thing. That multiplicity is a very exciting element of the future. Finally, collaboration. This is another huge liability of the way we've built computers and the way we think about them. The personal computer has gotten too personal, and now it's tiny as well, which means this device believes that it's only for one person at a time. And that means, in turn, that the worst thing you can do for collaboration is to have everyone in a conference room open a laptop, because all of a sudden those laptops are attention wormholes. They're black holes that suck your attention in, and then no one's in the room. Even though people are physically in the room, their attention is somewhere else in a virtual world. I think if we can switch to the video, we'll take a look at Mezzanine. So Mezzanine is Oblong's first broad market product, and it attempts to solve exactly this problem. It takes all the pixels that you already have in your conference room, maybe a bunch of HD screens, and turns them into democratic pixels. It turns those screens into a shared pixel workspace that can be controlled by any device you bring with you into a room. If you like your phone, if you like your tablet, that's great. You can use it to control the room, to inject content. If you like your laptop and a browser, that's an equally valid way to connect to Mezzanine. So the idea that you're using multiple devices, multiple UIs, and multiple people working together literally at the same time is incredibly freeing. Just in the same way that any 3 of us or 5 of us could go up to a whiteboard and all work together, because space sorts out all of the results, here you can have 5 or 8 people working together at the same time, fluidly, non-linearly, and getting to decisions, getting to ideas, getting to synthesis faster than they could if they were watching linearly or working linearly. And of course, you can bring in telepresence and video teleconferencing. That's just one piece of this future. Instead of VTC or telepresence taking over the whole screen, it takes over only as much as you need to. So if talking is important, make it big. If it's not important, shrink it down. Here you see a laptop connected to the Mezzanine system. You can watch the pixels fly around there. So one person's data, one person's computer, one person's application becomes everybody's. And you can even use a wand, which is like the gloves from Minority Report, but maybe a little bit more hygienic. And you can use it to pick up objects, sling them around the corner, grab elements from the whiteboard, take subsets of graphical images that you've introduced into the workspace, and combine it all together. The act of combination, the act of collaging, is an incredibly human, but also an incredibly valuable act. And it's that random jostle that time. It's that possibility of putting 2 things side by side that normal technology doesn't allow you to, that gets you to new ideas and that gets you to new decisions. So I'm going to wrap this all up now and simply say that I would like to build a world, and I think it would be a beneficial world, where instead of distraction and entertainment alone, we think about devices and systems that can increase attention, increase your connectivity with your own self, that amplify your human intent, systems that are transducers for human will, systems that try to reveal meaning rather than light entertainment, and systems fundamentally that are about synthesis and design, because that is what it is to be a human being. And now you're rid of me. Thanks.
So I think we're now moving to the panel on human-centered design. Oddly enough, it follows right after what John was talking about. So if I could ask our other panelists to come up, and we'll spend a short time discussing what this means. And we've got a great collection of panelists here, so I think we can bring the academic experience, we can bring the technology experience, we can bring the industry experience, and we can bring the government experience here together between the panelists. And I think we're trying to put up a short definition of what it is. But as we think about it, and there it is, I'm not going to read all of that, but just in case you were wondering. And I look at the bottom part where it says the chief difference from other product design philosophies is that its human-centered design tries to optimize the product around how users can, want, or need to use a product, rather than forcing the users to change their behavior to accommodate the product, which is a lot of the things that John was just talking about. And I think that's a lot of the things that we work at Boost Digital. We really think about how do you bring, and inside of Boost Digital we have industrial engineers, we have innovation teams, we have user experience teams, we have product strategists, we have data scientists, and we have your typical strategy resources. We bring them all together and largely to build these startups for our clients, and that's how it works for us. And it's created the speed to which you can get into the market is pretty incredible. And if you think about even in the venture cap, when we have a venture component to us, so we make investments, both A, B, and C rounds, even an angel in some situations where we find their technology to be pertinent for our clients. But you look at some of the things we look at, and I know a lot of venture capital look at, is you're betting not necessarily on the idea, but you're betting on the team. In a lot of cases, you look for that team to have both the business expertise, but also the technology expertise. And then what are startups? But they're basically human-centered design shops that just innovate until the point gets so sharp, and then they take it to market. And that's what we try to help the global Fortune 1000 do, which they get too big to really breed that culture, and we'll talk more about that. But I thought we could go around, because you're getting tired of hearing me, and just have, because we have a set of unique perspectives here, but I would love, I think as a starter, and then maybe we can turn it to the audience here to ask questions, just how each of you view human-centered design from your own perspectives. Maybe give a short point of view on that, and then we can go around. And I'll start with Claudia, because she's sitting right to my left.
Okay. Well, hello, I'm Claudia Gonzalez. I'm professor at ITAM. For those who doesn't know what ITAM is a private university located in Mexico City, created almost 70 years ago by a group of entrepreneurs. And since the creation of ITAM, the founders thought that human-centered focus was a crucial part of the formation for students at ITAM. So students take 8 courses focus on the importance of human being as the core of development. So now ITAM is establishing a center for creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And the whole idea of this center is to put together mentors and training and research and try to put together again students from different backgrounds in order to promote innovation-driven entrepreneurship. And for us, the human-centered design has to do with putting together people from business, engineering, engineers, mathematicians, economists, and try to create a more global and complex business ideas. Thank you.
I worked for an early incubator for UNAM some years ago. And the idea that was very useful, what they did was to join the industry needs with the academics and the research that was working at that moment. So what happened? The industry take care about what the needs were. They come with a problem that was easy to resolve with Mexican technology. They give it to the academics and the research personnel, and then at the end, deliver a complete product. So in that way, at the same time, the industry rewards the public universities with equipment, with resources. So at the end, was a win-win. But talking about exponential situations, I think it's important to aim technology in the future to a big problem that is coming for us as a species and survival. This problem is the overpopulation that is coming and is progressing and is going to provoke that we aim our technology to resolve problems like food supply, food distribution, reduce the food cost in terms of the carbon footprint that causes the distribution of the food, create better health systems that can be not centralized because we are going to have more elder people in the future. And these people is going to need support at their house, at their buildings. So we are in a big challenge to create all this technology that is going to improve communication, improve common being for all the people. And I think it's very important that we start thinking on that now.
I'm Rebecca. I'm here actually speaking, I guess, from the industry portion of the, I'm not sure actually, maybe a few of us are in industry, certainly founders and startups. And I loved John's section actually because I am a hardware nerd and I have been a hardware nerd my whole life. So it is fantastic to think about the ways in which hardware is expanding and changing and viewing itself not just as a platform, but as an empowerment platform. And that's what I see in gestural analysis. So very cool, love it. I work for a company called Synopsys. We do electronic design automation software for the generation of hardware platforms. And it's a really cool space because it's that intersection of software and hardware. And because we are developing the platforms that are being used throughout the world, we have to actually understand products. And we really try and take a human-focused, human-centered design approach.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Alexis. I teach at the Institute of Design at the Illinois Institute of Technology. Institute of Design is the largest graduate design program in North America, and we're also the oldest design program in terms of teaching human-centered design, which we really started in the late 80s. So I'm excited to see everybody interested in human-centered design here. From my perspective, there's really there's two angles. One is the corporate angle, because we do a lot of executive education at the Institute of Design. And when I think about human-centered design, I always think about a few years ago we were doing an executive workshop for a very large global beer company. And we had the chief marketing officer actually go to a party where his product was being served. And this was amazing because they had spent a lot of time in focus groups hearing people talk about their product, but they actually got to go into the field and see it. And what was amazing was he walked in and he saw that his product, the beer, was in a cooler on the floor. So you can imagine that his life's work reduced to the floor. But this is actually kind of an important moment because it shapes kind of what I think about human-centered design, because it really reframed his understanding of where the product fit within people's lives. And that's one of the challenges that we have, is oftentimes when you go and do this type of research, you'll see your product on the floor. But on the other hand, it's very freeing, because all of a sudden he got to think about how does our product fit into this larger activity system of people throwing a party. So all of a sudden it opened up a larger set of innovation opportunities. The second path is the academic path, and that is related to a program that I run at IIT, which is an undergraduate program that brings all of the disciplines of our university together. And what's amazing is the process that we can use to get them to communicate and to get them to talk is actually human-centered design. I can't teach an architect about chemical engineering, but we can immediately get all of the group to align on and work around the human-centered design process because it shares so much between all of the disciplines. So we see it as a primary mechanism of how we can get different disciplines to collaborate.
So sorry. I think before we turn it over to the group, I would probably pose a question to this group around what are the challenges that you see around human-centered design, and maybe I'll start with a story. I'm not a slide guy, so I kind of focus on stories. And we had a client, and most of our work that we do, we're going out 3 years and really deciding what the market looks like at 3 years. We don't go 5, we don't go 10. Those are good strategic questions. But at 3, you get a constant. You get technology as a constant. And I think you heard Mike talk about Moore's Law, and that's one of the disruptors we see. So the first one is processing power, and Moore's Law will double twice the next 3 years, as he talked about. And if you just go back 3 years, back 3 years, that's your iPhone 3. If you go out 3 years from today, your iPhone 3, the processing power is in an aspirin. So you can pack a lot of power. And then you look at, John was bringing up the different devices and the way to interface with content. And you look at the big driver there is low wattage Bluetooth that's enabling all these multiple devices. And you see Apple out filing 7 patents for wearable. Google's got a number as well. We've probably filed close to 50 patents for our clients. And so how you interface with content is going to be another. And then finally, how you get content to people. That's around broadband, which really created the e-commerce boom. And then you have standards around that. You have long-range Wi-Fi. You have standards at 802.11, which is the Wi-Fi running here. Well, you have 802.11 AC that just came out in the U.S., and it'll be pushing through as the standard gets adopted. That's 1 gigabyte per second. So that's 50 to 70 times faster than what you have here. So there's lots of disruption when you put that together. And we deal with clients that basically it's the boiling frog scenario. They basically look around at what their competitor does and copies them. Well, you can't do that in the digital space. It's just moving too fast. Industries are getting disrupted. Regional barriers are changing. And so what we look at, clients typically ask us, is one of two things. Either they believe they're behind in digital, so what should they do? Or, I'm doing a lot, I just don't know what to accelerate stop change. And so we had a client, a specialty retailer that is a pet retailer. They sell pet food and products around that. And they asked us to do that. So we came in, and the typical way we do it is we just design a digital company to beat the client. And that, in essence, is a digital startup. And in this case, we designed a marketplace for them that was centered around a digital pet collar. And so think Nike Fuel Band for pets. Which is pretty interesting when you start to think about the unmet needs. And the unmet needs are, the pet industry, especially in the US, is second only to kids. It's the only industry that did not comp down in 2008 and 2009 because people sacrificed everything for their pets. In my house, it's kind of the kids are 1, the pets are 2, my wife's purses are probably 3, 4, 5, and 6, and I'm a distant 9th. So you see a lot of emotion here, and then you start to do this ethnographic work that My wife is somewhere around here too, so I'm probably dead later. But we did this ethnographic work. We didn't even do focus groups. I don't fundamentally believe in focus groups because it's the idea, if you want to understand what a lion does, do you go to the zoo or do you go to the wild? So we went out in the wild. We went to pet parks and we walked in the stores and we saw that this fundamental unmet need around their pets of, are they getting enough exercise? So the first thing this pet collar is going to do, and it's 3 years out, so we got a 9-axle accelerometer versus a 3, which is today, and 3 measures this and that. That's the Nike Fuel Band. 9, you can do all kinds of different things. Is this pet collar is going to measure how many steps a pet takes. And now if you think about it, this pet retailer now becomes the source for how many steps my pet should take by breed by year. And that's a fundamental unmet need. Is my pet getting enough exercise? Next thing it's going to do, it's going to track GPS. Same thing, my pet gets out. I lost my pet, this will be able to do it. As well as, did my dog walker actually walk the dog? Did my kids walk the dog or just go to the end of the street and play with their phone? And then the third thing it's going to do, it's got a sheathing around it where it's going to constrict 2 times a day, and it's going to give you biometrics, blood pressure and heart rate. And again, this retailer has pet veterinarian clinics inside of it. And so basically it's going to set up machine to machine, and it's going to say, hey, if Fido is outside of this boundary for too long, it's going to send a message to the owner, and it's going to tell the owner to bring the pet in. And the first time that this retailer saves a pet's life, you probably have a customer for life. So these are the unmet needs that we're uncovering, and now we're designing a marketplace around it where other partners can plug in, from subscription food services to health services to pet dating. Pets don't date, the owners do. That's a lot of reasons why they go to dog parks, by the way. So all of these things, and it's going to interact with the store and all of this stuff. And basically, this retailer is about a $4 billion retailer, and we just designed a $1 billion business. And what they struggled with was the innovation part of human-centered design inside of them. Because what happens in large corporations and why startups are so successful and the venture capitalist community is so key to innovation is big companies, what do? Anything new, it's like white blood cells and they attack it and kill it. Or the reverse is they love it to death and they forget that they got to run their core business. So those are the dilemmas of human-centered design, and it's not the way most companies have been set up. So we have to work to try to pivot that, and that cultural thing, which we'll be talking to you next, is one of the key things. So I'd ask anyone in the group what challenges they see either from the government side, the Mexico side, or the academic side, and I know we had conversations before about this. Maybe a few thoughts on that, and then we can turn it to the audience. Anyone?
One of the biggest challenges that we have in teaching human-centered design is that we're asking people to think in abstractions, and we're also asking them to think non-linearly. So the importance of abstraction is so that you don't fit into repair service behavior. So instead of designing a new button that goes on the kiosk at an airport, think about designing for the entire check-in experience. So asking people to think in that way is often counter to how they've typically been taught to think. The other, of course, is the nonlinear portion, in that design is one of those activities where, to quote Don Draper, you have to be unproductive until you're productive. So we often see quite a bit of work happening near the end of the process, and that's part of any creative enterprise. So when you're working with a client who expects 1 day of work to equal 1 day of progress, you need to run some interference to make sure that the team has the opportunity to actually go and discover those unmet needs and have some of that marinate time to truly deliver a creative and innovative solution.
Great. John?
The biggest problem that we have with human-centered design at Oblong is the humans, finding them, hiring them. And I was reading something recently. It's a relatively recent phenomenon, maybe only 200 years old or less, that we've broken the world into disciplines, and you go to school and you learn to become an engineer or become a lawyer or become an artist or become a designer. And that worked for most of the 20th century, and now I think it's a huge problem. We deliberately tried to hire people who may be trained as engineers but took a lot of design courses, or trained as a cinematographer but learned to program on the side. Those people are still really hard to find, but they're incredibly valuable when you do find them. So we're really grateful to programs that try to instill those ideas. There's a few programs like that. Hopefully we get back to those sort of Da Vinci days when it's expected that everyone should think that way.
Hilda, any perspectives from Mexico?
Yes, but I agree with you. As the people is tending to be more specialized, but sometimes when you have human-centered design, you want somebody who has the empathy and see the whole picture, because otherwise the technology could be great. But if for the user and the end user, it's not a good experience, it's not going to work. And that is very complicated, because you have to educate your engineer to feel as a customer and visualize the system as the way he will like it to be. So I think that's complex, no? If we can grow our technicians with a bigger view of the world, not only the technical view, you know, if the education can be more integral, that will be a benefit for everybody.
Rebecca?
So to jump on the same bandwagon, I think the biggest thing that we're finding in our space, there's some that are real issues with hardware, and I'll leave that aside. It's the curiosity. It's finding people who kept their curiosity despite the educational system they went through, which doesn't really encourage you to think outside of the box. It teaches you to be rote, to memorize, to recite, to move forward. That's how you get the good grade. That's how the teacher likes you. You keep your mouth shut. You go with the system. And unfortunately, the best, I would say, product thinkers that I meet are the people who don't go with the system. They're exponential thinkers, to take a Mike Maples statement. You know, they're people who are trying to break the mold and think about it differently. It's very hard in hardware specifically to bring that thought process, because we're in the atoms-based economy instead of the bits-based economy, and some of the barriers to entry and the difficulties around sort of, it costs $3 million at least to make a chip, you know, and that's what we're going to have to approach, and it's going to take 18 months, and that's the long tail of the system. So I love the idea of exploring, and in fact in hardware you see a ton of exploration that's done in media and in film and in sci-fi, and that's where the inspiration comes, and that's where the value add is, in the observation of where people will pay their dollars. It maybe is in media more than in life. So that's how we're looking at it and trying to do more research.
Claudia, any thoughts?
Well, I think one of the main challenge for us is to encourage people to work in teams, in multidisciplinary groups. I think that was some main challenge. Engineers do not communicate as well with businessmen and mathematicians and economists, so that is a main challenge.
So I thought now we'd give it a little bit more time for questions that we don't typically have time for because we're running so far behind. But you know, we've got a unique group here from the technology, the industry, the academia, and the government side in Mexico, and as well as North America. So I think we have unique perspectives here that we could bring to the startup culture, to the industrial culture, or just the country or academic side. So any questions that we can see from the audience? And if we don't have any questions, we're going to say, oh, Kevin back in the audience. Kevin, we'll get you a microphone here in 1 second, I think. I could sing a song while we bring the microphone over.
Where was the question? Was right up here.
Over there.
Hi, this is Kevin Egan with Microsoft. I love, John, and the challenge that you laid out for hiring great design, human-centered design. What would be your advice to people who are early in their career, perhaps even entering into college, for what kind of curriculum, given that it's such a new field, what experiences would you coach youth or academic designers to create the design leaders of the future?
Well, certainly in the West, all of the forces are pushing in the wrong direction, right? My son is applying to college right now, and I've never seen such insane kids, right? The pressure is immense, and you remember applying to college or not? It doesn't matter. We don't require college degrees at Oblong, you know, which is a surprise to a lot of people. But you apply and you hope for the thick envelope instead of the thin envelope, but you don't really think about it. Today, if you don't get your kids into the right high school, they can't get into the right college. If you don't get them in the right kindergarten, they can't get into the right high school. And if you can't get them into the right nursery school, they can't get into the right kindergarten. So the stress and the idiocy begins almost from the moment you're conceived or born. I think we have to blow that up somehow. I don't know how. I mean, there's the other countervailing trends, right? When when you're a small child, you create, constantly until school stops that, right? You draw and draw and draw, you create music, you make up languages and stories, and it's only school that really, beats that out of you. So I don't have any kind of useful answer. I'm just wasting your time willfully. But I think school's an impediment. It really is. We need, what could we solve that's more important than education? Nothing. That fixes almost everything, and this is another piece of it. We're inculcating people, we're creating very kind of narrow, specialized people, and something has to change there.
That's one of the challenges that we have of just finding qualified candidates to go into graduate design school, is that a lot of people have forgotten how to be curious and creative, and it's been institutionalized out of them, and it starts very early. But certainly I think that education is one industry that's about to be disrupted, without a doubt.
What do you guys look for when you're taking a student?
We look for people who can demonstrate both analytical skills but also synthetic skills. So that rare individual who can hold those two contradictory thoughts in their mind, that you have to be evaluating all the time, but you also have to be creating. So we look for people who have a mechanical engineering background but also are interested in theater, things like that. So we're really looking for a good balance.
To your point, I look for a person who says, to quote Tron, I fight for the user, right? It's somebody who's actually thinking from the very beginning about who is going to use this product. What is their problem? What is the problem that's being solved? Always go back to the user, and that's how you can take somebody who has been so specialized, and you can throw them out and they see that their beer is on the floor, right? Observation. If they were trained as an engineer, they learned a philosophy of approaching with the scientific method, right? Forming a hypothesis and then trying to disprove it. And that's what we should be looking for, is take those raw skills in the scientific method and mess with them and keep messing with them until they learn to question their own assumptions.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hang on, let me give you the microphone.
Yeah, so we can hear you.
Right here, behind you. This will be our last question, so you're a lucky man.
You talked about the challenges with human-centered design. None of you mentioned the challenges in getting business people, particularly senior executives, to understand the fundamental uncertainty with this, right? You talked about how you're not busy until you're busy, you're unproductive until you're productive, right? And you talked about the insanity of schools, and which I agree with. My daughter's applying to colleges. The question is, how do we actually break this mold as people who have been doing this professionally? How do you get senior executives to not worry about the predictability of it? This should be on budget. I need to see progress along the milestones. I need to make sure that you will have something at the end. I mean, you're asking me to take a leap of faith here.
I was thinking you probably should take that.
So I think there's a couple of thoughts there. I think one, in the corporations of the world, I think it's fundamentally helping them understand what got them here will not get them there. And they need to put some bets out there, and they need to foster a culture that'll allow for that to happen. And I think this is where you're seeing a lot of them form these digital centers of excellence, innovation centers, labs. That is really the conduit for them to actually help start to breed this culture into organizations. Because if not, it's kind of that innovation dilemma for corporations, which is if it's new, I'm going to kill it, or I'm going to put it into some linear method of ready, ready, aim, aim, aim. Let's go back to ready again because it's still new and I don't want to do that because it's different than my core. So I think there's one of how you foster that organization environment, and how do you get it to scale so you can transfer it back in. So a lot of the work that we're seeing is happening a bit outside. It's very hard to foster that inside, and I think scale means a lot of different things for a lot of corporations. And it's also the same thing if you bring it to a startup culture. I mean, we form startups. We're forming one almost every other week. So we're growing pretty quickly. And the startup teams have all of these multidisciplinary teams from the industrial engineering side. Our head of innovation used to build nuclear reactors, then went to design school and designed one of the best-selling Nike shoes ever. So we're looking for that that skill set. I think you'd hear from Mike and other venture capitalists that we work with that they bet on teams. not necessarily the idea, because the idea is going to pivot, it's going to iterate as you go through. So I think for corporations to do that, and largely you see lots of them pivot. Apple has pivoted a few times. Microsoft has pivoted a few times. If you don't pivot, you die. And so I think it's imperative that they try to find the culture. So I think now, I think the environment of the day is to build it outside and get it to somewhat of a scale and then put it back in. And I think what you're going to start to see is the morphing of roles like chief marketing officer and chief technology officer and chief strategy officer kind of morphing into this innovation officer and being really responsible for this innovation. Because understanding back to that point, what got them there or got them here will not get them there.
And Jeff, that takes us right into the very next panel discussion. So thank you all. Thank you guys very much. You get to stay up there.